try to briefly present my views on strengthening indigenous peoples' governance for biodiversity conservation, sustainable use, and equitable sharing. As Lucy has said, I've been engaged with this process for since the start, but at some point my colleagues were the ones who have been involved with this. But as the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, I joined John Knox in a meeting, expert meeting that he held on biodiversity and human rights. So what I'm going to present to you today will be basically the experience that I have had in the past in my work as the Executive Director of Tubtuba and the present work that I'm doing as the Special Rapporteur. So, can I just move from here or you need to move? Okay. So the outline is basically to talk about what are the duty of states, what is the duty of states to respect, protect, and fulfill indigenous people's rights, which is of course linked very much to biodiversity, to the capacity of indigenous peoples to contribute to biodiversity. Secondly, I'll talk about community strengthening, which is really the core of what we are all doing. And I will discuss this through the lens of indigenous people's sustainable self-determined development. Then I will talk about some of the activities that are happening on the ground, which my organization has been doing along with our partners, but also which I have seen in the visits that I did as a special rapporteur in several countries. And I will discuss about community biocultural community mapping and information systems, monitoring and information systems. I'll not talk very much about community biocultural protocols, but I also will talk about autonomous territorial governance. Next. So I'd just like to run you through the duty of states to respect, protect, and fulfill rights of indigenous peoples as contained in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and ILO Convention 169. One of my mandates as a special rapporteur is to continuously raise awareness about the rights of indigenous peoples, and I deliberately chose the rights that are contained in the UN Declaration that are very much linked with the issue of biodiversity conservation and sustainable use and equitable sharing. So as we all know, the data evidence in the world that have been done so far in the researches that have been undertaken will show that in areas where indigenous people's rights are recognized and the titles of their lands are also recognized, those are the areas which coincide with the biodiversity hotspots in the world today. In my country, in the Philippines, 90% of the biodiversity hotspots are coinciding with the ancestral territories of indigenous peoples. And this is the same case in many countries where I have been visiting so far, whether we are talking here of Brazil or other parts of the world, like even in the Arctic. So the right of indigenous peoples to lands, territories, and resources, which are contained in 5 articles in the Declaration, is one of the basic foundations that we use when we talk about biodiversity. Of course, the right to cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions, which are contained in which is contained in Article 31. Next. The right to self-determination, Article 3, and the right to development. Many of you may not be familiar with this, but there are several articles on the right of indigenous peoples to development and the right to their subsistence economies. Then, of course, the free, prior, informed consent rights. There are 6 articles in the Declaration that refer to free, prior, informed consent. And I hope that you memorize all this by heart, because I am informed that this is becoming a very controversial issue in the discussions here as we are here in Cancun. So those are all the references to free, prior, informed consent which are enshrined in the UN Declaration. Next. Of course, we have the respect for customary laws, community protocols, and procedures in implementing state obligations relating to traditional knowledge and equitable sharing of benefits. These are also found in Articles 5 and 31 in the UN Declaration, and the CBD articles, Article 8J, 10C, as well as the various protocols of the CBD. Next. Now, I talked about Indigenous People Sustainable Self-Determined Development. This is a framework, an integrated approach and framework that Indigenous peoples are using in various forms in several countries in the world. So when we talk about this framework,